Dear participants, welcome to the NARDAC Full Update Forum in 2024. I'm Clara Liao, NARDAC Chair. We're very excited to have you with us today as we explore the intersection of artificial intelligence and cataloging, a topic that's more relevant than ever. Here's today's agenda. I will give a brief update about the NARDAC's work. Dr. Cohen, the chair of the Joint RDA Board and RSC Working Group on Artificial Intelligence, will provide an update on the working group's progress. Then Dr. Lowagie, the head of the Agency for Bibliographic Information of the National Library of Belgium, and the vice chair of EURIG will present and demonstrate the practical application of Microsoft PowerApps. The app helps a lot in the automated cataloging and the enhancement of metadata. After that, we will open the floor to answer any questions from the audience. Please put your questions to Q&A so that we will get to them at the end of all the presentations. Now let's start with the NARDAC update. I will go through the first few slides quickly as they give a brief background of NARDAC, including our current members and the communities we represent and the roles that we have in NARDAC. Here are the current representatives, adding expertise in the areas of library science education and French language cataloging was suggested by the North American cataloging communities for years. And NARDAC actively reached out, and we are very happy to have two professionals with the years of working experience in these two areas joining us starting this May as our co-opt members for 3 years. This is our organizational role. As we've had a NARDAC update in June at ALA, this update will mainly cover July through this October. NARDAC is working on 3 proposals. One proposal focuses on adding links to the data provenance guidance on the manifestation elements pages. Hopefully, it will make recording the source of information much easier while using the official RDA toolkit. We worked with CCDA on a proposal to allow the use of numerals in the languages beyond the Latin script in the name access point. We also noticed some minor revision needed for the element of a variant access point for corporate body. Although those proposals won't be ready for RIC's coming November discussion, they will be available in the near future. Since June, RSC has released 4 proposals and 1 discussion paper for the community comments. And NARDAC has been actively reaching out to its constituencies for input. By now, we've collected and compiled all the comments and submitted them for RSC's November discussion. During this process, we also noticed that a time requirement for the proposal submission would be needed in order to ensure enough time for a quality review and then for the community for further discussions and commenting. NARDAC has raised the issue, and it will be discussed at the executive session at the RSC meeting in November. New Zealand started their official RDA implementation in July, and PCC Working Group on Metadata Application Profiles has submitted their work for PCC SCS final review. Since July, NARDAC has actively reached out to both groups for possible presentations at the NARDAC Update Forum. Both groups have responded that they are likely to present their work at the NARDAC Update Forum in the spring 2025, so stay tuned. what's coming next. After serving as NARDAC chair for last 3 years, I will step down in this December. Elsie will send another representative to NARDAC, and a new NARDAC chair will be elected this December. And for the coming spring update forum, as I just said, we will have 2 great topics, and hopefully they will be very helpful to the coming RDA implementation in North America. And if you have any interested topics or programs, feel free to let us know. We will represent our community members, reach out to any programs that you're interested in. Without further ado, let's moving on to the updates from the RSC RDA Board Joint Working Group on Artificial Intelligence. Hand it over to you, Dr. Cohen.
Thank you. At the January 2024 RSC meeting, Colleen Barbas and Renata Behrens informed the RSC of the RDA Board's intention to form a joint working group on artificial intelligence. The working group's charge was finalized in July, and a white paper has been presented to the RSC and the RDA Board for approval so we can start creating deliverables. Next slide. The RDA Board and the RSC have recognized the significance of artificial intelligence in cataloging processes and the impact it can have on professional lives of those who create metadata. More creators are crediting AI as part of their process, and library system vendors are deep into testing how to integrate AI and large language models into their products. The working group had to be very carefully scoped. RDA provides different pathways for how metadata is produced, but it can't take a position on specific tools, workflows, or systems. Next slide, please. The membership of the working group is made up of 3 members from the RDA Board and 3 from the RSC. Many of you are familiar with Charlene Chu and Judith Cannon, both of whom served on the PCC task group on strategic planning for AI and machine learning. The joint working group will serve through the end of 2025. Next slide, please. In our charge, we were given 3 tasks. The questions we were asked to research are, is AI being used to create catalog data? And if so, which technologies are being used? And which standards, if any, do these implementations follow? How can AI assist in or hinder implementations of RDA? What are the ethical implications of using AI that might affect RDA? And finally, are there copyright or other intellectual property considerations with regard to AI that might apply to the implementation of the RDA tool? Next slide, please. Beyond the questions in our charge, we wanted to get a sense of where the international cataloging community was holding. We created a survey, which was based on the survey the PCC had earlier sent out to its members. We received 74 answers from around the world. The results may be an artifact of the list to which the announcement was distributed, or of which libraries are currently showing strong positive or negative interest in AI for cataloging work. 63.5% of respondents came from academic or state and national libraries. Of these, only 18 respondents have ever tried any AI tools which could be used in cataloging. But what are their plans for AI? Next slide, please. 30% of respondent libraries had no plans to incorporate AI in their cataloging. Fewer than 1 in 5 libraries are currently using AI in some capacity in cataloging workflows, while slightly over half of respondents plan to incorporate some AI at some future point. Next slide, please. The main reason those who have no plans to incorporate AI have decided against it are about evenly split between such work simply not being a priority and an overall lack of trust in products of AI and large language models. The overwhelming reasons for the lack of trust in AI were bias in the training data set, copyright and other IP concerns, worry about AI providing misinformation or hallucinatory content, and data privacy and security concerns. There were some comments about staff concerns that their jobs might be threatened by the incorporation of AI into their workflows. Next slide. So how is AI expected to impact our professional lives? Next slide. We can use machine learning and natural language processing to automate repetitive tasks, leaving us the more fun parts of cataloging. As AI is incorporated into library systems, smaller libraries are likely to see benefits. Overall, AI can help make cataloging more efficient, but it can't replace catalogers. It's not a replacement, it's a tool to complement human expertise. Skilled catalogers will still be needed to be in the loop to train the models, but also longer term to oversee and fine-tune AI outputs, ensuring both accuracy and that cultural context is considered and maintained. Next slide. Looking ahead, what's the working group expected to create? Next slide. Most of our deliverables are built into our charge. We've already written a white paper, which the RSC and RDA board will be reviewing, and then we can continue with our deliverables. And in addition to what the board and the RSC have asked for, the working group has already suggested establishing a minimum RDA metadata set to help AI systems perform more accurately and reliably. Next slide. It's clear to the board that the description of the tasks of this working group can only be a start, and that further issues, such as the effects on practical cataloging, can only be formulated and supplemented at a later date. For example, currently AI doesn't fit the definition of an agent, and the proposed glossary definition of a non-human entity to be discussed at the November RSC meeting reinforces that automated processes, which may or may not exhibit some human characteristics, are external to RDA. The working group will have to provide a way for the RSC to grapple with how to describe resources on which AI is credited with a creative role. Part of the point of moving from AACR 3 to RDA was so that the rules wouldn't need to be rewritten with each new bibliographic format. And with AI, machine learning, and large language models, we see the wisdom of that move. Here we have a whole new way of creating resources and metadata, and yet the question isn't whether RDA can handle this immense change, but how we organize the possibilities already in the toolkit to make it easier for catalogers to work with AI. Next slide. I invite you to follow our work, which will be published to the RSC and RDA board website, and to let the members of the working group know if you have a unique AI application which will be useful for catalogers, if you have any ethical concerns which have not already been raised, or if you want to share case studies and research with us. We're here to explore how AI can help us, because it's still true that the catalog is the heart of the library, and that catalogers are the living, breathing part of the catalog. If you have any questions at the end of the session after Hannes's talk, I'll be happy to take them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahava. Let's moving on to the next presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
And thank you for inviting me. I will explain a bit more about what we are doing with PowerApps and how we use PowerApps to improve our cataloging. Next slide, please. So first of all, we are KBR. I work in KBR, the Royal Library of Belgium. We are National Library of Belgium. We have it's a general introduction. We have some medieval manuscripts. We have 5 million books and 3 million patrimonial objects, coin, medals, maps, and so on. Next slide, but I think there will be no. So today I will talk about two things. First, how we use PowerApps for creating bibliographic records. What it does, how it detects metadata from a title page or from a colophon and so on. And secondly, how we use PowerApps now, or how we don't use it yet, but we are testing to use PowerApps to create an RDA application profile, but that generates also in the meantime a file that validates the records. If the records, the bibliographic records that you create are conform your RDA application profile. But it's also in PowerApps, so I will combine the two. Next slide, please. Yeah, next slide. So maybe first a small word about PowerApps and Power Automate. Microsoft Power Platform is developed by Microsoft, and that's a low-code platform that enables users like us to create business applications. But it's made for the business, but we as library can, so immediately the advantage too. Why it's easy? Because it's all used with a visual interface. It's no code, it's low code, or you have to know a bit what you know, but it's all visual. If you want to create an app, it's just insert a button, insert a link to your data source, and so on. And you have four main components. Is Power BI, it's for the statistics. You have Power Apps, is to create applications. You have Power Automate, these are automatizations that you can start, for example, when there's a new file in SharePoint, then send that file to an email or use that file to do this or to that. That's an automatic process that you can create. Or Power Pages, and Power Pages is a web page that you will want to show your data to external users. And all those four components can be linked to data connectors, but also AI Builder. I will explain a bit later what is AI Builder, and Dataverse. And Dataverse is the data, is your table or is your database built in the Power Platform. And it's all made for people like me who are not really ICT persons. I'm a historian by origin, so I'm not an ITer, but I can easily create applications like this. You have to have a certain interest in it, but you don't have to be an ITer. Next slide, please. Okay, so a small word about our retrocatalogy project, because I said we have 5 million books in our stacks, but only 3 million is in our online catalog. And that is a bit an issue if we want to have a view on our collections, but that was a bigger problem. And next slide, please. During COVID, no, it's okay. Because we asked our readers, when the reading room went open again, we asked to reserve the books online. But because some books were not in the online catalog, it was an issue because, we ask our readers to reserve the book online, but they're not findable online. And when people were in the reading room, we could still say, look at the library cards, the paper catalog. There you can find your book and search for the call number. We need to have the call number to search our book in the stacks. But when we asked it to do it online, it was not possible. So we decided, it's important that for the lag, for everything we have in our stacks, but not yet on our catalog, we create as quickly as possible a trace, something in our online catalog. So we created for that project an application. And the process, the workflow is, you see on the slide. So the idea was we take a scan of the title page, and it had to be offline because in the stacks we don't have Wi-Fi. It's too difficult to have Wi-Fi in the stacks. So it had to be possible to take the scan online. And we used students for that, but also a Sheltered World workshop. They also made a lot of scans just of the title page. Then we put everything once. We have the pictures, they send it to us, we upload it in SharePoint, and then the Power Automate flow starts. So that's the automation that says, oh, there's a new file in SharePoint, we have to do something with this. And the first thing it does is, okay, use your AI model. Try to detect what's the title, what's the author, what's the publisher. I will tell later about the AI model. Then take all that information, save it in your Dataverse table. And then in your PowerApps, that's an application that we created to have some human validation. And in the application, we visualize the data from the Dataverse, and then people can look at it, correct it, modify it, and validate it. And all the validated data can be then exported in a CSV, so in an Excel file or CSV, and then we can import that CSV in our library management system. In fact, the PowerApps or the application, the human validation was an optional step. We didn't need to have the human validation. We could also send it directly to our library management system, but we could, because it was built in 2022, so we had to make sure first, is the data okay? Does the AI model works well? So we really wanted to include that human validation, and that allowed us to also to use to work with volunteers, because there are a lot of volunteers who are now validating the data. Next slide, please. This is the AI models. That's, I don't know if it's clear from the slide, but these are the AI models that Microsoft offers. And you can see that is below every square, there's pre-built or custom. So the pre-built models are models that Microsoft offers and that you cannot change. It's some standards models. For example, the first is extract information from invoices. That's a model that Microsoft trained based on, I don't know how many invoices, but an invoice has more or less the same structure. So when you have your invoice, you can scan it, use that model, and it will detect what's the price, what's the offered goods, what's the VAT, and so on and so on. But you can also use the same type of model, and this is a custom model, the extract custom information from documents. And it works the same. You can train a new model based on your own information that you provide. So in our case, it was images from title page. You can annotate every image, say this is the title, this is the author, this is the year of publication, this is the publisher, and so on. And then it will train your model. You only need 5 examples, but 5 is really the bare minimum. It's better to have more, obviously. Next slide, please. On this image, you see how it works. So you import an empty title page, and then you say, okay, the name that's on top, now it's here, Louis Noël Marquez. Yeah, it's a French book. That's the author. The title, you say this is the title, and so on and so on. And then apparently the system will create its own rules to detect, for example, what is the title. And it will be on various variables, such as, okay, the overall structure of the title page. I will tell a bit more later about that. The text placement, is it put in the middle? Is it put on top of the page? Is it put at the right corner, for example? The font size, for mostly a title is bigger, so when the text is bigger, it will more likely detect that text as a title, because all the examples we send to the model, and we indicate the largest text, the biggest text was a title. So in this new text, a new image, he will say, oh yeah, it's bigger now than the rest, so probably it will be the title. But also the text content. For example, we have edition statement, and we had some examples where 6th edition, 4th edition, revised edition, and we always annotated that as edition statement. But then we had an example. It was funny. It was an example with edition in the title, and it said, this is an edition statement. That was incorrect, but it was interesting for us to know, okay, so apparently he doesn't only look at the structure of a title page, he also looks at the text itself to detect if it's an edition statement or not. And probably it will do the same with like places or cities, or maybe also the publishers. If you have a list and it has already seen that as a publisher, if, for example, here it's Libraire Edros, maybe the next title page with Libraire Edros in it will also be detected as publisher, because he already know from the training that Libraire Edros is a publisher. I don't know exactly, and that's a bit the disadvantage. I don't know exactly how AI works or how this model works. I only work with the output, and I only can, by training a model, see if it works, or retraining, this works, this doesn't work. So this is a bit learning from me, but yeah, that's a bit the disadvantage of I don't know how the structure is behind it, but that's also too technical for me, I guess. Next slide, please. Next slide is the same as we have already seen. Yeah, and this is a video, so hopefully it works. Yeah, okay, it works. So here is an example, because normally we import slides using SharePoint, but you can also do a one by one. And here you'll see we import one image. Now it's turning, so it's searching. It's the model is doing its work, and at the right you will see the detected information when it's done. Yeah, so now it's done. Now you see, okay, title. It's made. Yeah, I don't know if you can read it, but it texts cours de bibliographie, donc the French title as a title. The author Genève as place, libraire Ethos as publisher, and then I can save it, edit, and then I have all the same fields but in editable fields. So now the human validation can say, is it correct? Do I need to correct something? Do I need to add a point, delete a point? If, for example, 1954 is the year of publication, sometimes it has a point or something that has to be corrected. But now this seems okay. And then I click on the save button, and when it's a save button, it validates the record and I can export it, or the admin, but so it's not the volunteer who can export it. It's only me and my colleague who can really say, okay, now export it. We do it every month to do an export and then import it in our catalog. Next slide, please. So we, as the National Bibliographic Information Agency, are also responsible for the legal deposit and the cataloging of the contemporary books. And when we had the application of the retro application in use, it was a bit strange to see a modern way to catalog the older books, and then a manual way to catalog the contemporary books. And it was a bit strange also because in the contemporary books, there are much more contemporary books. We have the catalogers. There's always some backlog and they have to work fast. And that was a bit of an issue. So I thought maybe we can use the same to also find a way to catalog the contemporary books. And most importantly, those who sometimes we import metadata from publishers to know what is published. But sometimes they don't have a we call it pre-notice in French, so a pre-record. But for the books we have received and are not yet cataloged in our system, we have no trace in our catalog. So we even don't know if we have received a book. So that's important that we do it as quickly as possible to scan a book. That was the idea. We receive a book, we scan it, and there's some basic bibliographic record that's created to say to us as patrimonial institution, but also to the publisher who has deposited the book, okay, we have well received your book. And then the idea was for contemporary books, the title page contains less information than the older books. Almost all the information is on the title page from the older books. And when I say older books, it were books from around 1900, so the early 20th century. It's not 16th century or 17th century books, but the contemporary older books. But for the contemporary books, the really 21st century books, we needed to add a model that detects information from the colophon. We needed some subject indexing, but finally we decided to do it otherwise, but we tested also with subject indexing and entity extraction. And then we said, yeah, maybe the system can do everything. It search information in other catalogs, in ISNI, for example, to detect the ISNI of an author, and import a file directly in our library management system. So we delete a step of human validation because we import it directly in our library management system, and there it can be validated. Finally, we chose a way to still use the application to add some information, because now when a cataloger scans a book, he has some information with the physical book in hand, like the number of pages, the measurements, and so on. So we decided he can take the scan, all the bibliographic information will be detected, and all the information that's needed with the book in hand will be added in the application, and then the outcome will be a whole record where everything, so also the number, the centimeters and the measurements where measurements and the number of pages were added to the record that's created. Next slide, please. So this is how the what you see here at the left are the screenshots from the Power Automate flow. So it's you always need a trigger, and the trigger here is, okay, a file is created in Power in SharePoint. It's a specific folder in document library and SharePoint. And then I say, okay, from that scan, it's a scan that always the first page is a cover, the second page is a title page, the third scan is the colophon, and the other scan is the back text to have some text to do some subject indexing. And then he says, okay, from the second page, so the title page, it detects title, author, publisher, and so on. From the colophon, it detects ISBN, also publisher sometimes, the year, copyright year, legal deposit number, very important for us. Copyright, it's not yet in the colophon, but we hope that one day the ISNI identifier will also be put in the colophon next to the author's name. But most importantly, from the colophon is ISBN and legal deposit number for us. And then the back cover text is the fourth scan, and the text that's put on the back cover. And then you can also add some other scans, but in the flow you have to know, okay, on page 2 I have to work with the model of the title page. On page 3 I have to work with the model of a colophon, and then on page 4 we have to have the text of everything. Next slide, please. And then this is an advantage of a Power Automate flow. So it's a flow, and every step follows each other. And when you have the AI from the colophon that detects ISBN, you can immediately say, okay, but now you have an ISBN, search that ISBN in other catalogs to maybe see if they have already a book. For our legal deposit books in Belgium, it's not really the case if we scan it quickly. But for all the books or for some other books, we can find some information in other databases. So use that ISBN immediately as in an API or an a search and retrieve URI call to search that information. And that way we can, in fact, something that a human cataloger does. Okay, I have a book, I will search the ISBN on internet or on other databases. We can try to automate it also. Next slide, please. This is how, with the first, what you see on top is the condition. So it says if ISBN is found, yes or no. And then if yes, now I have a run HTTP KBR, so it's our own catalog, run HTTP BNF, so the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, no, the French. I looked at my neighbors here, so the French National Library and the DNB is the German National Library. So for the test, I used those 3 catalogs, and I extract the metadata in MARC21 because we also work in MARC21, and then I can say, okay, if for example BNF has a response, they work in Unimarc, so but it's the same if they have a title cataloged, or use that title or use the title we have detected. So it's a bit, you have to decide what information you use, but for example, number of pages can be extracted from external sources. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is an example from the German National Library. So you see it's an action in Power Automate, HTTP DNB. So it's a title I gave to that action. It's a search in the German National Library. And it's in SRU, you can see maybe the parameters, and one of the parameters is query equals, and then I say the value of 20A. And 20A value, in fact, that's how I called the field of ISBN. So I can, it's a bit, I trained the model with all the MARC21 fields. It's not that I say title, subtitle, ISBN. I just, it's maybe for me easier to use, but I just used 245A and 245B. And so for ISBN, I used 20A. So now he searched with that URL, okay, search records that have that the output of the AI model, so the ISBN and then put a response. So if they have a response in a variable, and then from that variable, I can extract all the information what I want. And I had slides to show the same about ORC-IBR or the National Library of France, but it's all the same principle. It's a get call, and then you put your as a URL. Next slide, please. What I didn't put in the slides, and that we can also do, we are an ISNI registration agency. So if we detect an author, we also chose to search that author in ISNI. And then when it's, you can search in ISNI with a name, but also combined with title words. And I think I did that, and to search, okay, extract from ISNI. And then even when I find an ISNI, I can even search that ISNI also directly again in other databases. Do you have information from that author with that ISNI? If so, extract more information. For example, when you have just Lowagie and you don't have my full name, but you can find my ISNI by searching Lowagie and some words of a title from my book. Then I have my ISNI, I search my ISNI in other databases, and then maybe you can extract or find, but the full name is Hannes Lowagie, or maybe an ISNI database itself, but you can use that database also to improve the data I have extracted. That's a bit the point. And then from the subject indexing, so the text from the back cover, but you can also take a scan of the table of contents or just some pages in your book and say, okay, try to detect what's the subject of that book. We have also in Microsoft a category classification model. And it works the same, like maybe some of you know Anif from the National Library of Finland. So they have also created a way to easily attribute a certain subject to your to an unseen text. But it works the same. It has the biggest disadvantage that it's maximum 200 terms. So you can train a model with maximum 200 terms. It's not made for a library world. It was made for example, you have a hotel review, and then you can detect it's a review about breakfast. It's a review about the sheets, about the clean. Is it a room clean or not? So the number of categories that you can train is limited, but we used another system, and we worked with a hierarchical system and said, okay, first detect a general classification, and it was, for example, okay, it's a book about history, and then because he had detected history, we had another model that say, okay, only trained with terms related to history. Okay, it's Middle Ages, it's Crusades, it's Napoleon War. It's all specific terms about history that's in another model. That way you can, for example, you have it's music, and then you can train another model. Okay, model for A has detected it's about music, so you can use now model B that has more specific terms about music. Is it rock? Is it jazz? Is it country? I don't know. But finally, it was honestly too difficult for us to maintain all those models and to also, when it attributes a term, to know why is it incorrect, or how can we improve all the training data. You can, next slide, please. So we decided to do it otherwise, and we wrote an article about it in Code for Journals. So maybe I can give you the link. I didn't put it in the presentation, but that's more based on a matching of just the matching of words, and say, okay, we have the terms, for example, history, give some words that are linked to history that you will find in books about history, and that can be, for example, century. Just the word century. Books about history, you will more find the word century in it, and then century you link to history, and then okay, you have 3 times century in just the back cover text, so probably it will be a book about history. And it's a bit a system like this. It's maybe too simplified to say it like this, but it will help us, not really for subject indexing, but for we always give a general classification, and we will use that. So we are now putting everything in place to use that system for helping our catalogers to classify, to give a classification of the book. To say it's about right, it's about history. I always use the same example, history, because I'm a historian, but it's about social science, it's about applied science, and so on. And then also in Microsoft, you have also entity extraction model. So for example, we had one time a book about Leonard Cohen. In the back cover text, it said he was born in Montreal. Okay, he detected Montreal as city name. And then we can, okay, then the output of the model, the entity extraction, is Montreal as a city. And then you can say, okay, for search Montreal in, because it's a city name or a place name, search Montreal in, I'm just giving an example, in geonames, and then get the identifier of geonames, add that also to the bibliographic record, and then you will be able to add a place name, Montreal. But finally, we didn't choose that because the human cataloger doesn't go that far. When it's just saying in the back cover that Leonard Cohen was born in Montreal, now we don't have the time, or we will never attribute Montreal as a geographic name to the record. But in fact, with entity extraction, it's possible to extract place names, but also person names, dates also. For example, a famous one is 4045, that it detects that as a date, and then you can use that also for maybe subject indexing or adding information to your bibliographic record. I tested a lot. So I tested with entity extraction, I tested with subject indexing, but finally what we will put in production is a very basic, it's just the AI model and some corrections, because I wanted to have something in production that really works well and that people get used to work with, or catalogers. And then when that works, maybe next year or maybe in 2 years, I will test with other things. Maybe now we can also test with entity extraction. And if that goes well, maybe we can test with this and that. But for this test and for this, not for this presentation specifically, but I just was curious about all the possibilities of PowerApps. So I tested a lot with everything, and I think there are a lot of possibilities. Now I'm using also Python more and more to do things, and in Python you have also a lot of possibilities. But the advantage of Microsoft PowerApps is that you can include everything more in a very easy to use workflow. Next slide, please. And yeah. And then when you have everything, so you have your AI output, you have your output from your HTTP queries, you have your output from subject indexing or entity extraction, then it's up to you to decide what will be the output. You can put everything in Mark21, you can put everything in a BibFrame file or format, you can put it in an Excel, you can put it in an, in every other type of database. You can send it back to the application for some human validation. You can send it directly to the library management system with using FTP. That's what we use now. So we create a Mark21 XML, we put it in the FTP of our library management system, and then every 5 minutes, our library management system will look at the file, will look at the directory and ask, does it contain a new file, yes or no? If yes, import that file as a new record. So the output, the format of the output you can choose, and it will depend on your workflow. So it's, that's the last slide phrase sentences. That's not possible to present a single definitive solution because everything depends on your institution, on your workflow, on the people who will work with that. But the main ideas is always the same. Next slide, please. Play, because this is also a demo version. Yeah. So here I take a scan of, it's a Spanish book, but it's a translation of a Flemish book. Here I don't take a scan of the cover. I limit it. I just scan the title page. Then I scan the color font. Normally we work now with mobile phones and with the OneDrive application on Microsoft Lens, because you can send directly pictures to SharePoint. But here I still worked with OneDrive. So you'll see that at the right, you see scans. It's a specific folder in my OneDrive. So this scanning application will create a PDF, will send it to my OneDrive. You can see it on top of the left. It's OneDrive KBR, so it's our business OneDrive. And the flow that I used for this demo starts with if a file is detected in OneDrive. So now there's a new file, and then every minute the flow will look at my OneDrive, and the output will be, you'll see, automatically created a file that say, okay, it's processed with the ISBN, and then the different types of output. Here, for example, this is my MAR21 XML. It has the legal deposit of Spain because it's a Spanish book, the ISBN without the hyphens, the title that you see, it's all capitalized because it's for the demo. I can include a step to put it all to lowercase or to uppercase or to proper case, but I didn't do it here. Yeah, it's a bit fast, but you also saw Barcelona as place of publication and the publisher. And these are some 653, some terms that were attributed from the subject indexing model we trained. And here you can also see Erwin Mortier as the author and his ISNI. So he included also a 700 with that information. And then I did the same. I put everything in a bitframe file, but we don't work with bitframe yet. So it was for me a bit difficult, but I wanted to test if that was possible. But I'm not really used to work with bitframe yet, I will say. So yeah, I just wanted to test if such thing would be possible. And this is an HTML because, yeah, if I want, I can put everything in. That's just to show also that the output is lasting to this side. In fact, once you have all the information, the output is just up to you to choose. But I can even choose decide to put it all in HTML. And I also tested to extract work, and I extract the information from a work and expression and so on. But also it was very a language of expression, for example. Is it a French book? It was now a Spanish book, so it had to be Spanish, the content type text, but it was a test, so it didn't, yeah. I should improve that, in fact. Next slide, please. Yes, it's also a demo, so please. Play, please. This is a bit the principle of the legal deposit. So now I have some scans of books I had here in my stacks. It's just also for the demo. I put it to my SharePoint. That's to show the steps that the cataloger will add his scans to the SharePoint. And then all the information is sent to Dataverse. Dataverse will create a new row in its table, and then for every new row you'll see there's a new record that's created with a new scan detected. Okay, and that this is the title, but the title will be updated by the real title once the AI model has done its work. So you'll see that now. You'll see, yeah, for example, you'll see all the information is coming up. So you have the title, you have the author, you have the publisher. You have one it's received, if it's already in our library management system or not, the ISBN. So you see all the PDFs are coming in with all the information extracted, and then I can click on the record. And this is now already in use. We put it in use since September, but with one cataloger that uses that. And then in October, there was a second, and that way we are upscaling it step by step. Yeah, this is also something. So Margareta van Oswald is the author. Yeah, I can click on the pencil to modify it. It already searched in our authority database, and he gives there the number of the authority from Oswald Margareta van. And this is the information I talked about that you have with the physical book in mind. The number of pages, the number of the measurements, sometimes the price, the language of cataloging, and based on what you choose here, all the other information will change, and it will be, because I chose English, it will be the number of pages. When I chose Dutch, it will be pagina's, and so on. And I added also the last thing, the bibliography lexicon index is the 504. So a bit what's also in the publication. Yeah. but that's because that's also something that's easier to detect when you have the book in hand. If there's a bibliography, if there's a list of authors, if there's a, yeah, everything you see. It's a basic list. It has to be elaborated, but that's the idea how we'll work now with the scans that don't have yet a record, and maybe with scans that already have a record too, if the output or if the way of working will be improved or found easier, then it will be just updating the pre-existing record that we already imported from the publishers, and he will say, ah, yeah, but the title of the publisher is incorrect because the detected title has changed a bit compared to the title you have received from your publisher. So we'll update also the title, we'll add the number of pages, we'll add the number of centimeters, the measurements, because that kind of information the publisher don't always know when he's asking for an ISBN, because we import the data from Boekenbank, and Boekenbank is the organization that attributes ISBNs to publishers. So we work with very rough data, so we can use that application also to improve that data. Next slide, please. Next slide, please, because it's a small. Oh yeah, no, I didn't have a video. I thought I have a video, but it was. You can also, the AI model can also, maybe previous slide. Sorry. Yeah, so you can also detect tables. And for example, the table of content, he can detect, this is a table. And then you can also in your flow say for each row of your table, so here it is for each article, create a record or create a 505 if we talk Mark 21. So because it was a question from a school who had a small library, but with very specific periodicals about education and about pedagogy. And they say, yeah, we don't really offer everything to our readers. We just say we have that periodical, but that way they wanted to give more information to their students. Their users were students. It was a school library. And be able to, if someone searches a specific subject, he will find it because it's indexed on article level and not on the just title of periodical level. Next slide, please. And then we had the old maps, and they had the same. Yeah, you can also play the video. So also we have some maps that the US Army has made of France and other regions and give to KBR. And we use the same because they have all, yeah, you saw, you have the title, you have the place, you have the scale, and you can train your own model to do just the same and extract also that information. So this is now France, Prince Insura. This is the publisher, the War Department Corps of Engineers of the US Army, the scale. And that way it's our idea to scan also all the maps and to, because we received a big collection from a National Geographic Center in Belgium, and it were more than 100,000 maps. And the idea is to use that now to catalog them very quickly in our catalog, because it was a promise we made to the organization that gave all the maps that we will quickly put them in our catalog. So that way it can be done quickly if we just have someone who can take the scans quickly. And that's sometimes now the issue. We have to find people who can take scans. So next slide, please. Yeah, then we have also our library cards, but one year in KBR, the machine to make that cards was broken, and some personnel, some woman who worked in KBR wrote everything down. And we have now boxes full of handwritten cards, and we have trained a model that also detects this handwritten text. So it also can detect the handwritten text. Maybe next slide already. And here we said, okay, put it in an Excel, because it was easier to put everything in an Excel here, because it's easier to scan in batch, so it's easier to put everything in Excel to just quickly validate the output. And you'll see here that everything will be comes in the Excel. It was also chosen to be in Excel because in Excel, you can create new fields based on the information of other fields, very easy. So we created a call number based on the information of what's the author, what's the format, what's and everything. Because yeah, in KBR, that all detects depends. The call number depends on all those variables. So that's also something we have now planned to scan in March. So in March, there will be a student, an intern, who will do that as a task, scan everything, and then all the records will be created too. So this is the AI part. And then I work now with PowerApps, maybe next slide, to create an RDA application profile. And maybe a bit of history. So history, it's not really history, but it's in May, there was a EURIG annual meeting in Helsinki, and we talked there about the RDA application profiles, logically. But that way, we also have a tool developed by Peter Kirali. That's a QA catalog. And what the QA catalog does is validates all our data. Is it conform MAR 21? You can see the URL there, so you can always have a look. Next slide, please. And it checks the record. For example, is it for example, there, repetition of a non-repeatable field. So MAR 21 says, this field is non-repeatable, but apparently in our record, we have 2 times that field. So this is an error, conform the standard of MAR 21. And we use that to check everything, and then records that do not who are not conform with the standard, then we can, there's an export button, so we can export all the identifiers. We can import that in our library management system and correct them. In the beginning, we had like 5% was okay, and we used that to improve and to correct all our MAR 21 records. So that was very useful. Next slide, please. And so the man who developed that tool, Peter, said, okay, but now I have a tool that validates is your record conform MAR 21, but we have now a new option that allows custom validation, so that you can create your own rules, your own set of conditions, like he mentioned there, and then do the same, use the same dashboard, and then say, okay, this is conform your custom validation rule or your custom rule or not. He has written an article about it, and it was a pre-publication just at that time also. Next slide, please. And then I thought, yeah, maybe it can be useful to create an application profile. To create an application in PowerApps that we can use to create an RDA application profile that says, okay, in MAR 21 we use this is an obligatory, this is not repeatable, for example, and then to use all that information to create a validation file, and then to check every record in MAR 21 in your own catalog, to check if it's conform, not only MAR 21, but also is it conform your own rules you have developed in your application profile. And this is the shackle for BIP custom validation file. This is a bit how it looks. Apparently shackle is very exists to check RDF files, or that was my previous slide, I guess. So he changed that a bit to also check your own MAR 21 files. Next slide, please. Because I have an example. So what you do to create your application profile, first is you select manifestation, and then I have all the RDA elements I have exported and put in a table, and then from all that elements I can say, I want to include it in my application profile for that type of documents, books, periodicals, and so on. So here I wanted to add type of binding in my application profile for books. So I searched, and in the top you can see type of B. So I now only has type of binding as a result. I select that. Next slide, please. Then I have some information to fill in. Okay, do I want to add it to my application profile? Yes. For what document types? Books. Is it repeatable? No. Is there a vocabulary linked? Yes. in what MARC21 code will I put that information, $340L? Is it repeatable? Yes. Is it obligatory? No. And then the pattern. And the pattern is if it's a structured field, or if you want to say, no, it has to be structured or linked with an identifier. Okay, how do you want that field to start? And we chose to use the RDA type of binding vocabulary. So we have linked our field to a table that also have the identifier is the RDA identifier of type of binding vocabulary. And then we have our labels in French and in Dutch because we are multilingual city, so we have to offer everything in the two multilingual countries, sorry. And it added also or KBR because sometimes we added some local variants if it's not in the RDA vocabulary. But I just here the pattern said that field has to start with RDA-TB or KBR. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is everything that's in my application profile. So every record that I said, yes, I want to add it to my application profile. And then I have a button, generate custom validation file, but it's shackled for BIP. Next slide, please. And this is my flow. So it says, okay, it's the same principle that I use for the AI, but it's the same flow that creates the output file. And for example, if obligatory is yes, I have to add a rule that says min count is 1. So it means I have to have minimum 1. If it's repeatable, no, it's not repeatable, then the max count is 1. So it has maximum 1 occurrence. And if a pattern is filled in, so if there's a certain structure to your field, then put that pattern as a condition. Next slide, please. This will just generate that type of field. So for example, here you have $340L, and the pattern is it has to start with RDA-TB because that's how the vocabulary identifiers start, or KBR. But now we have changed it also to KBR-TB because we have a pist or proper. But for example, for 300A, you can also say, yeah, hey, we had also used P.A for pages. But now we will use RDA with language of cataloging, also something we didn't choose. We also used a lot of abbreviations. So we want to delete the p-punt and we want to use pages or pagina's in Dutch. So you can also say, yeah, the field cannot have the pattern P or gepagineerd or pag from page. It has to and a point. So it has to be really pages or pagina's and not all the other variants. So that's also something you can include in your validation file. Next slide, please. And this is then the output. You can, for example, here you see $340L. The pattern has to start with RDA-TB. It's a relatively new field we added. So you see that the condition passed for 120,000 records. We have 4 million or approximately a bit more, like 5 million. But that's why it's the gray. A lot of fields do not have 340L, but when they have a 340L, it's all past the validation file, so it's okay. So that means that every 340L we have is conforming our own rule. Next slide, please. And then when it's not conform our rule, we can also export our data. For example, all the red here are records that still contain p-punt or pag-punt. So these are the records we have to validate maybe one day. Next slide, please. It's same for ill or illustrations. And then what we do then is to use a Python script to correct it. First to detect language of cataloging, or cataloging of the language of the document to detect. For example, we have rules that say, I have to explain a bit, the French books will always be language of cataloging French. Even if it's a Dutch cataloger, he will do the cataloging in French. The Dutch books also, because it's very sensitive in Belgium to have your own language for your own type of documents. So we have some rules made for that too. But so when the book is in French, he will delete the p.punt, I don't know how to say it exactly, and then change it by pages. So that's the script we can do for everything that's that you saw in the previous slide is it's not conform the rule of it may not contain p-point. Next slide, please. Yeah, so it's a general slide about this application that's in development. I only have what I have shown now, but it's promising because I think it can help to create your application profile in the first place, to select the RDA elements we want to use and in what way. And then also to create, yeah, also to export everything in an Excel or in a PDF or I don't know, but it's that's the second part. But the first part is to create your application profile and to determine exactly everything what you want. And then also to create a custom validation file that's linked to it. That's not a, in Dutch we say dode letter, so it's a dead letter. So it means that it's written down the rules, but nobody follows it. So that's something we want to avoid, that everything you determine in your application profile is also followed by the catalogers. That's a bit the idea. And then you have the daily updates that ensure that every day say, there's 10 new records and 5 of them are not conform the validation rules. And then you can correct them, but you can also, if you want to go further, to look at who are the 5 people who made those records and maybe give them some extra information and so on. That's not the main idea, but it can help to, when you have the new records that are not conform, to see a bit where do we have to correct it or to add more information, to maybe give some more training and so on. Next slide. Yeah, this is already my last slide. I don't know if I talked enough or too fast. But if you have any questions, do not hesitate to email me or to send me a message on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lowagie. And now we open the floor for all the questions. I see there are quite a few in the Q&A. Let's go through them one by one. I assume many of the question is for the second presentation, the third one, I mean. One question is, if you do not find an agent in ISNI, do you add them to the ISNI database?
Now in our daily work, yes. So what we do, it's not in the PowerApps or in the automatization. We don't do it automatically, but what we do in our daily cataloging is every month we have our national bibliography and we publish the Belgian bibliography. But before we publish it, we export all the authors. We check them with ISNI. Do they have an ISNI, yes or no? And when they don't have an ISNI, we ask an ISNI for them and we send the linked bibliographic information. Because yeah, they are considered authors that are linked to a Belgian book or to a book linked to legal deposit or Belgian bibliography. So that way we have automated or semi-automated the way to ask an ISNI. But it's not provided in the Power Automated flow, but in fact, I think we can do it and we can send a search request, or I don't know the terms exactly, an ISNI request to ISNI directly and to check, does it exist? And if not, create one. I think it can possible, but for the moment, it's not included in that automation.
Get it. I'm answering the second question. The question is whether the Dr. Lowagie's presentation will be available online. Yes, we will post all the presentations at our NARDAC update forum, the website, and then also the recording of this update forum will be shared to the participants and then also to on the YouTube channel. Another question. Thank you very much. Someone gave us credit about the early program for them, but definitely worth the getting up early for. Thank you so much. A question is, would be curious to hear more about the entity extraction part. Hannah's mentioned doing this against ISNI, I think.
Yeah, no, I mentioned it with the subject indexing. So we have the back cover text, and then you can choose to extract some entities. But first of all, you have to define, and that's something we didn't do just for the testing, but you have to define what do I want from the entity, what entities do I want to extract firstly, but also if I extract an entity, what do I want to do with it? Do I want to add it to our bibliographic record? Do I want to add it as a 651 or something like this? So as a geographic name, or do I just want to use it to add some more information? I don't know. And that's something we don't have defined clearly yet in KBR. So that's something we don't do. But what you also can do, if you have, for example, all the text from the colophon, and then you say, just extract all the names you find in the colophon and determine them as authors or something like this. But the disadvantage is that you have sometimes cover, illustration of the cover and a name, and then all the roles you don't have with entity extraction. That's what I want to say. So we have illustration, translator, and the name, and you only extract the names and not the roles linked to it. So for the colophon, it's not the best idea. I think it works well with the subject, with the text to say, okay, it's a book, and maybe it's about Montreal when I give that explanation, but a book about the life of Leonard Cohen. He's born in Montreal, but it's not a book about Montreal, or Montreal does not always, it's not said that Montreal plays a significant role in that book or in the content of that book. So it is possible, but I think it's very important that you don't choose it to use it and that you determine what do you want to do with it. I think.
Okay, great. Our panel member also have a question for you. Do any of this generative AI platforms subscribe to RDA Toolkit? How do we catalog using AI when the AI platforms do not have access to the RDA rules or guidelines? Or are they using some other set? At this point, it's all about the encoding of data, grabbing it and encoding it into some system, but it's not about making decisions based on the content standard, which are themselves based on user needs. It's not cataloging as we currently practice, or is that where the cutoff line between AI and human catalogers lies? Very good question. Dr. Lowagie, can you answer that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I will try. So how do we use everything, or all the AI I explained is to extract the information that you can find on the book. Okay, what's the title, what's the author, what's the publisher, what's the year? That's something that the human cataloger will also, if he starts from zero, will transcribe. Okay, he has the title. I put the title into 145A. But it stops there. When I don't have subject indexing or entity extraction, the basic information is there, and I don't. If RDA says take the title of your manifestation from the source, okay. If a human cataloger transcribes it, or if AI detects it, it stays the title of the manifestation. So for me, it's not really an issue of who has generated that information. Is it transcribed or is it detected? But all the relations, if we talk about LRM or also subject indexing in some extent, is still the human task. So it's up to the human cataloger to make some more profound decisions about where do I have to link it to, what subject subject term I will add. So in that way, AI helps to create a fast registration to detect some basic information. But the most interesting, if I may say, cataloging work still remains the human work, I think. And when I say most interesting, for me, it's the most interesting to see, okay, how is it related to other type of resources and so on. And I think what concerning RDA and the RDA profile, like I said, it's RDA does not determine, and I think Ahava mentioned it too, if it's made by the human or is it made by an AI system. The title of the manifestation is the title of the manifestation, and it doesn't really, doesn't really, for me, it's not important who is the creator of that information, because information is always stays the same. And the things where are there some room for interpretation, or is some room for interpretation, this is still the human cataloger, and it's always, there will not be a record that will not be seen by a human cataloger. So what we create is a first fast registration of bibliographic record, and then it's always the human cataloger who will finish the record in the library management system and do all the other work.
Can I expand on my question or just respond to what you've said?
Yeah.
I agree that the extraction of that descriptive data is improved if we can do it, very quickly. I'm talking about more defined or minute decisions that we have to make. A lot of that. So I teach cataloging. I'm a cataloging educator. If I'm teaching a student how to use or develop and use their cataloger's judgment as it comes to things about authority control, name authority control, or, for example, I'm working, they're about to start an exercise in where they have to work with uniform titles or preferred title access points in making decisions about creating, for example, a uniform title and how that might look and the components of that. The metadata encoding aspect of it can be learned quite easily. That goes in this field, that goes there, or it's marked up in such a way. I'm a little worried about what library administrators will think based on past experience, where if they believe they can get, some of them may believe that, I don't need a human to do this. I can just have the system do it, the AI platform, and kind of, throw out all of the things that make our catalogs consistent and unique and able to exchange information will be sacrificed, which probably is too harsh a word, for efficiency or money. So I'm just throwing out there that, first is this question of, we have these RDA rules, but they're behind a paywall. So what are they? I have colleagues who are playing around with various AI platforms to do cataloging, but what really is doing is they're just the platforms are just mimicking MARC record, what they find online. Oh, this is what this record looks like. Not making decisions about data, that the kinds of decisions that yes have to be made by a human. So when we say cataloging, are we, I think we should be a little bit more specific when we're talking about what part of the process that these AI platforms are doing. And I'll stop there because I can talk on this for 10 days. Yeah,
maybe if I can quickly react. So I agree that the like I said, the main things you say, okay, what's the uniform title? How do I clicked the mute button. How do I have to create a uniform title? That is a human task, but in our situation, I don't know how it is in other libraries but we have more and more publications, certainly for the legal deposit, and we have less and less catalogers still. Even before the AI, we had less catalogers. So we try to automate what's possible. And I think the first step we do is automate the detection of all the metadata, maybe do some searches and have more information. That we'll try to automate. That's the first thing. So it's more like a solution for the current situation. If management will decide and say, oh, everything can be done by AI, we don't need human catalogers. How can I say it? It's not my responsibility what the management decides. I can still hopefully convince them that it needs some human work. It's not only AI, because AI do just the cataloging. But on the other hand, I will also not use AI, because otherwise maybe the catalogers will, the management will say that AI can do everything. So I will not avoid AI. I will try to use it where I can, just to improve the process, or try to improving the process, try to make it more efficient, just to give the human catalogers more time for their valuable work, and that they don't lose time with transcribing large titles, searching, like we have a lot of Arabic Cyrillic books that nobody is trained in, that we can detect that kind of information also quicker. So I hope it's not but that it can be I'm searching for my words, complementary, and that AI does the part where it's good at, and that's detecting, and maybe the Power Automate flow is good and do some quick searches and do some quick creating records, and that the human cataloger can, thanks to that, continue to do what he's best in, and that's the subject indexing, relations, and everything that you mentioned. So I'm not too afraid, and I don't want to not use it just to not use it, if that's that clear.
And I would like
Thank you.
to add in that at this point, AI tools are really bad with non-Latin scripts. So we've been working at my library to try to train models on Hebrew script, Arabic script, and Cyrillic script. And one of the things that we're trying to do is exploit the registry and application profiles, the way you saw in Hannes's presentation, to help it. What we're working on right now is a combination of OCR and controlled vocabularies and Hebrew scripts to try to figure out in a religious work what percentage of the text is coming from which classic book, so we know which to give, going into Mark speak, which to give the 130 and which to give the 730s. So I don't think AI isn't at the point where it can make decisions, but I think going forward, there's enough outside the paywall that eventually it will help with decision making, but it's really far from a point where it can replace a human brain.
Okay, let's moving on to the next Q&A question. If possible, share the slides with us, especially with the email, including the recording. Jamie, can you do that?
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you. Another comment is great presentation. Thanks. Can Dr. Lowagie speak more about the catalogers interaction or human interaction with AI outputs in the workflow?
Yes, I think it's a bit what we talked about earlier. So what's the role about with AI, and what's the role about the human catalogers? But when the question is, how do the human catalogers of my team respond to all of that? How can I say it? They're curious what it's can possible. They're skeptical also about the possibilities, but that's good. So, but everyone who I have shown the possibilities about the detection, about the subject indexing, is still impressed about the possibilities. So they are not against it. I think they're skeptical, but they see what it's possible to do. And some even try to think how they can use it in their own work, in their own cataloging work. So I cannot complain about their reaction. It's not a big revolution or a strike because AI will replace our work. I don't see that, because they also face the challenges of all the books, all the stacks in their room that are full, and that our management says, yeah, that book has been deposited 6 months ago, but it's still not cataloged. How is that possible? And I think they have a lot of pressure from that, from, okay, we need to catalog and we need to catalog, and we have to do every day the same. And sometimes it's not really. So I think it can help in, there's something new, there's something that will maybe take some work from us, but that will give us more room to do some other work. So I have a rather positive feeling about that.
Great, thank you. Folks, please keep typing your questions in the Q&A. I have a question for Dr. Lowagie. You mentioned that you use 5 examples to train the model with the pattern that they can detect and matching the category of the data. I'm curious, it relates to, I assume, the layout of the title page image or colophon. If 2 or several books like a completely different, the model can automatically think, for example, depend on the font size of the title, larger print, the machine would think, oh, it's title, something like that, to do automatic match. Little bit interesting to hear, like 5 examples can train the model to detect the could be various layout of the title page, and then get the correct transcription data. Okay.
Yeah, that's good, because that's the part I deleted from my presentation that I maybe should have kept in. What you need to train a model is collections. And so before you annotate your training data, you have to make different collections. And for each collection, you have to have 5 examples. And what is a collection? A collection is books that have the same structure, or pages that have the same structure. So a title page can have different structures. Sometimes you have a title page with first the author, and then you have a title, or sometimes it begins with the title, and then you have by and then the author. So what we did is we took a lot of we took a lot of pictures from title page, and then we divided them in all type of collections. And so how do I say? We had to create a typology of the title page. There are title pages that has 2 publishers in the title page. There are title pages, like I said, will begin with the title. There are title pages will begin with the series name. There are title pages that begin with, I don't know, the author. And then for each collection, you have 5 examples minimum, because it's really better to have more. And then apparently the first thing the AI model does is to look at to what collection does this title page belong. So to what structure has this title page? And then maybe when he'll see about the whole structure, oh, it's apparently a title page that begins with the author, and then you have the title. Then the first thing, the text that will be put on above the title page, he will automatically say, this is the author, because the general structure of the title page is author, title, publisher. So that way you can also use different title pages, different typologies, different type of title pages to all train in your own model, and with the division of different collections. And now we have an intern that's taking, she's working in the room where the catalogers are, and she's just scanning every book, only the title page, just to improve title page and color font. But it's not to use for cataloging, it's to improve our AI model. Because we have our AI model, I have took some pictures from the books I have found in my own stacks, or in the books I have found, but it's not enough. Now we really want to improve the model, and we want to take 100, 200, 300 pictures, just to give more to improve the model, and to see if it's really improving the model. That's the first thing, because sometimes when you have 10 pages and all 10 pages have the same structure, it will not improve the model. It will, then you have one is enough, and you have to have different examples of different types, and maybe sometimes a publisher has always the same title page. Some publishers with us, every book they publish have the same title page. So it's better to have a bit of a variable data set, training set, but also not too variable, because once we had a title that's like very curly and we used that to train the model, and then the curly was the title, curly text of, it was like in a wave, and then every text that's a bit curly, he'll detect it as this is the title. So that was also not possible because we have a lot of publisher information that's in an icon, and then it's also curly or not straight. I don't know if curly is the right word, but I hope you understand what I mean. And that was my first difficulty, how to train your model the best way. And this is something that Microsoft could offer some more explanation about it, or maybe I have to just study more about how AI works. But for training the AI model, that's a bit trick, and you learn by tricks and falls. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I received quite a few complimentaries in the Q&A. Okay, let's answer since we do have time, let's answer all the Q&A. If we have more time, I see also the panel members, they have very interesting opinions with regard to the AI topic. We can open for a small panel discussion. How long or how many attempts did it take to train the model?
Training a model does not take a lot of time. It's half an hour, maybe an hour and a half. So it's not really that long to train a model. How many attempts? When it didn't work well, I just added some more pictures. And when like the examples of the curly pages that I just deleted from the training set, and I said, okay, I will just use some basic metadata training title pages. So not many attempts. It was just sometimes some retraining because we added some new examples and others maybe some new. Now that we have found some title pages with the series name, so we'll create a new collection, and then it will add series name as information you want to detect. So not too many, but we have two different models. One for the older books, that's for the retro cataloging apps is one model, because there we have also said, we have to extract the place of publication, the year, because contemporary title pages does not always contain that. So we created a new AI model. Maybe it was not necessary, and we could just create new collections that said, this collection does not contain pages, place, or this collection does not contain year. Maybe it was possible, but because I was not sure, I just created a new one with examples, training data from contemporary books. Maybe at the long term, I will have to put them together and create one big model. But I don't know what the outcome will be. And because the retro cataloging app was already in production, I didn't want to influence also the output of that model. And when I made that model worse, because I trained with some contemporary book information, that was a disadvantage for the retro project. So I decided to keep them apart. I see another question in the Q&A. Maybe I can directly add it. If you added the scale by the side of the item being scanned, would AI be able to calculate dimensions?
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, sorry.
That's fine. We have another question. If you added a scale by the side of the item being scanned, as they do for the museum object, would AI be able to calculate dimensions? Yeah, well, this was the question I just read. I don't know. I maybe, but then I think you have to make sure that you indicate the number of centimeters, because then you have to detect, okay, the title page ends here, or the book layout ends here. So now you have to read the information that next to it. So maybe, I really don't know. I don't know what type of model will be able to do that, because you can always indicate, for example, the number of centimeters and extract that kind of information.
but I don't think the AI will see, yeah, you have to take the number that's really at the end of the page. And also important, for our project, we decided to use document scanners, and document scanners have like a border detection. So it only takes the title page of the book and not all the other information around the book. So that was a big advantage. Scanning is go much faster because your book can even does not have to be straight. It can be that way or that way because of the application will detect that directly as this is your page. And it's better because the output is just your page and the model is based on examples that are just your one page. So for our project, we didn't do it that way because it's then you have to give more information or use your training data to do more. But I will say test it and let me know.
Okay. I do have a question from a panel member. If some of us wanted to try out what you demonstrated in your presentation, both parts, have you made the programs available, or would we need to develop our own program or scripts?
What you certainly will have to have is your own license, your Microsoft licensing application. And how to create your application. I received that question a lot. Can we test it? And some institutions I sometimes help, or I say, yeah, I can help to set up. But because I have received that question a lot, I'm now maybe considering to publish a book about that and to give some more information about how to create your own application, how to how does the Microsoft Power Platform work? How do you create an application? How do you create a Power Automate flow? But more in detail, like I did now. And the idea from that book will be really a practical guide. So you can use that book. You can, if for example, extract the information from external sources. Yeah, how do you do it? You have to have some expat expression, but you have to be sure that you know how the expat expression is correctly done. So I will say maybe in I don't know how many time you can read my book if that one day will be finished. But I certainly want to help, or I want to, but I don't. It's not possible. It's not really possible to send it to you, export it, because there are a lot of local parameters about sending it to your library management system. What are the external sources you want to use? Also title pages. Maybe title pages from Belgian books are different than title pages from local American books. I don't know. So it's not really the best idea to just export some test and to import it, because there are too much variables that will impact the flow and impact the whole automation and application. So yeah, use maybe the practical guide will be the best. So,
obviously, you've attracted a group of audience very interested in put hands on to develop their own apps for the work. So that's good. We have two other questions. Do you have some sort of model that can detect what's this or that type of title page? In other words, do you have a way to group automatically collections without having to pre-select or organize them on the stacks by a human?
yeah, I understand the question, and I don't have that kind of model, and maybe that would be interested because Microsoft has now a feedback loop also, because you have your model and you have your application, but it's not the improvements of your metadata will not impact the model. The model is something that that's standalone, and you have to import your own data. But now it has a feedback model, and like when the confidence level is very low, so he detects title, but he's only 10% sure, you can also have the confidence level. Then you can say, yeah, send now this image, because there's so low confidence, back to the feedback model. And then in the model, in the feedback loop, send it back to the model. And then in the model, you can you have everything where the confidence level was low, but then you have to decide yourself to what collection do I have to add now this image. So this is a big disadvantage. So it would be better to, like you say, have already say, but this is a low confidence level, but it's from the type author title publisher. And this is from the type title page by author publisher. So that would be good, but that's not yet there. And this said, the first application was created by a PowerApp developer, so an organization that we paid to create the application. All the other things for the contemporary books I developed myself, but the first thing was made by a professional, and he was interested in the subject because he used another model to detect, and that can be important for ebooks. To detect what type of page is this page. So every page can be analyzed and say, oh, this is now a title page, just a title page, because it has the layout from a title page. And this page has the layout of a color font. So this is now a color font. And then you can be using that to say, okay, for example, we have to make our scans in the fixed order, but when you have an ebook and the title page is on page 3 or on page 5, you just analyze the first pages, and then when he detects a title that has the look from a title page, he can say, model 1 detects this is a title page, and then model 2 detects this is the title, this is the author from the title page, so the model we have now. So this is something that he created and that maybe we can use to if one day we work with ebooks, to just from that ebook detect what is the title page, detect what is the color font, to in the next step detect all the metadata from that type of pages. And he wrote a blog post about it, but I do not have the link here. But he used a Microsoft Azure vision, computer vision model. So not the AI builder, but Azure. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. But also a Microsoft model to do that. So yeah, maybe I have to contact him to put it to use it.
Thank you. There's another question. Have the catalogers found many errors so far from the AI? If yes, then what type of errors have you seen?
Yeah, the most common errors are the basic errors. He detects the author as a title. He detects the title as the author. Certainly in the beginning, there was the most common errors, and then it was the point of just to detect and to improve the model. But certainly there were some errors. When there's a new type of structure of the title page is a bit different than before. Yeah. The most common errors was that, like edition statement, year, place of publication, that was mostly correct because it is specific information. And like I said, if he looks at the text, okay, there's 4 numbers, so it will be the year of publication. I think it's certainly a rule by detecting the year. So those are the data that are relatively correct, except when all the books, the OCR was not correct also. So we have also some German scripts, but some like the old German scripts. I forgot the name. Fraktur, I think, is the correct term. And that's also something that the OCR from that type of text is not perfect. And a lot of S's he detected as a B. And so sometimes you have that type of errors too. But from the contemporary books, the pages are more structured. The OCR is certainly always more correct, except maybe the non-Latin script, but we didn't really test with non-Latin script. And the detection is relatively okay also. So the errors were more with retro cataloging in the beginning of our project than now, maybe because we improved the model or we know more how to entrain the model. But yeah, certainly there were errors, and I think it's logical that there are errors or not avoidable.
Have you tracked the time it takes to process a single item with PowerApps versus the traditional cataloging?
Yeah, but it's difficult because the output is not the same. Like in PowerApps, the output is a basic bibliographic record. Like we said, it detects the basic information. It does not have a link to the authority file. It does not have other relationships to other resources in our catalog. So it's difficult to compare it. That's the first thing. if you create a flow, we once created a flow with using the AI model, detecting all the information, searching in external databases, and so on. The whole flow takes about 2 minutes. So you can say, creating a bibliographic record using PowerApps takes 2 minutes, but it's not the true answer because it creates just the basic. From the moment it creates a basic bibliographic record, and we can improve more and more steps to improve more and more information. But yeah, the most important problem we have is, for example, for the maps, is who's going to take the scans and why do we have to take scans, and who's going to take the scans and when. But because of COVID, also now we have a lot of telework, and catalogers scan some pages at home. I didn't mention that, but they scan some pages to complete the record at home. And it was just that was a bit contradictory to, they make a scan, but without OCR, without metadata extraction. So they will not lose some time now in scanning the books because they already scan the books, because thanks to scanning the books, they can work at home. If they don't scan the books, they cannot work at home. They have to come to KBR, and people like to work at home. So they take the effort to take the scans, and when taking the scans can improve the bibliographic record outputs. And also, that's another technical issue, but now they have their library management system, and they have the scan in a so the scan they take now is in a server of KBR, and they have to have 2 screens, because on one screen they open the server, and on one screen the library management system. But the scanning method we're using with SharePoint, I add the identifier that I can use to embed or to create an iframe. I add the identifier to the bibliographic record so that I can show in our library management system an iframe that shows the PDF, so shows the scanned document. This allows them to, at left of their screen, they have their Mark 21 fields to edit and to create, and at the right they have a visualization of the PDF. So it's also easier for them because on one screen they have both, and they can make the record side by side with the scans. So this is also something that will improve their work. So when it's about their reaction, they're rather positive, also because they see that it can improve or that it can facilitate their work that way also. And not only about AI or not AI, but it's just the automatization and the whole process that improves or can be improved.
Great. One question related to those errors and mistakes. It's about whether AI can really learn. Are you able to use those error or mistaken items to teach AI what's wrong so that it doesn't make the same mistake again?
Yeah. So when the output is bad, the output is bad, and it's not that this image is sent directly to the AI model. So you have to really say, now we have added to the human validation a step, okay, the scanning or the detection is bad, and the people who validate in the retro cataloging app can click on that, and then we can export that list to use that metadata as to improve the model. It's a bit like the feedback loop. It's the same. A feedback loop from Microsoft works on the confidence level, but he can say, yeah, I'm 10% sure that this is the title, but it can be correct. And sometimes he's 100% sure of the title, and he will say, yeah, I'm sure this is the title, but it's not really the title. So, and then he will not set that image to the feedback loop. But when the human cataloger then sees, but here the AI says it's 100% sure that this is the title, but in fact it's wrong, he can indicate that, and then we can use that to improve the model. But it's always, that's a manual step. So they have to indicate it, and then one day we have to export all the metadata and improve the model. And that's something we didn't have done yet, but we can do that. But for the moment, the output is relatively good, so I don't get a lot of issues like that. So I do not want to touch also the AI model if 90% of it works well. Because you always have the risk that you modify the model that works well, and that by modifying it, it works less. So I don't know, but I don't want to take the risk. But maybe when I have time to really check the output, retrain the model, see if it's better, see if it's not, then I can do that. But that's, in fact, a full-time job on its own. So
That's right. What programming skills are needed, especially it is for the current library science education in most of the countries, especially in the United States. Some of the programming languages not kind of required classes or courses in those programs, and how we can help our students to get ready for this AI coming era, and then do they need to have those skills to be able to develop those apps?
Yeah. My catalogers, some have skills, technical skills, some do not have technical skills. It's not needed to have really some technical skills as a cataloger. It's maybe a strange thing to say, but when I create the application and I have some technical skills and it works well, then the cataloger is just a user and do not really needs the technical skills for himself. What do I need? Like, luckily, it's mostly low code, so I don't need a lot of technical skills that way, because otherwise it will be also too technical for me. I use some XPath to just extract, to know what to extract information from XML, and to say, okay, take data field 245 subfield A. So that's really easy. And honestly, I use a lot of ChatGPT to create my XPath, and I asked to ChatGPT create an XPath to extract that kind of information from this XML, and then that's ChatGPT is very good in. He will just create the XPath and it's done. Sometimes I have to correct it, or it's not works not very well, but that's how I use ChatGPT, just to improve my technical skills. And what we use now, but it's apart from PowerApps, apart from everything, is more and more we use Python, because with Python it's very easy to create, and it's also it's made for like changements on data and to do some external searches also. Maybe for subject indexing, we are now, the article we wrote is about subject indexing with Python. So to tackle a large type of data and large type of text, you have some natural language processing libraries you can use also to count words, to extract entities also, because that's something we will now test instead of using the entity extraction from Microsoft, to compare it with what does the NLTK, it's a specific library in Python. Does the entity extraction from NLTK works well, from Stacy and other works it well? But that's something we have to test, and that's something I really ask a lot of advice to one colleague who's really more technical than me, and she's a librarian, but she is studying IT courses, so she's more ITer than me, or just my IT department too, because sometimes it's too technical for me. So I think it's also a difference because between writing, for example, a script, or just be able to interpret what it does and to do some changes to it. Because writing, then it's very technical, and then you need your own IT, and maybe you can ask ChatGPT, but when ChatGPT gives an output and it doesn't work well, it's up to you to decide or to interpret it and to say, okay, I see the error, because sometimes ChatGPT is very consistent in making every time the same error, even though you say no, it's not correct. They keep sending the same error. So then you have to work with what ChatGPT sent and with the parts that work well, and then correct the things. So I would say XPath, Python, and just some general interest in all the technical evolutions, because even Python is not really is old and maybe will not exist in 10 years, but then there will be new language that will be. So yeah, just the general interest, I think, is most important than having really knowledge of, for example, XSLT, we use it also a lot, but everything you do with XSLT, you can also do with Python. So my colleague said, I don't want to use XSLT anymore, I want to use Python. So even though you can, 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, you said, you really have to know XSLT. But 10 years later, it can be outdated and you have to know Python. So I think it changes all too too fast to say you have to learn this specific language.
Yeah, I agree.
And thank you. Someone added a link to the article.
Yes, with the link to the Code for Lib journal article. I myself also experienced, I learned Java and then C++ when I was at the graduate school for my degree. And later I find that these days using ChatGPT for the Python programming much faster than those basic programming language that I learned decades ago. So I think in the future with the natural language, you even without any coding background, one can generate a kind of usable script for different apps. The question is whether you can ask the right question to the ChatGPT or to those language model for them to give you the correct script or not. We moving on to the next one. Would you be able to argue for additional staff resource to enhance the existing records? For example, using scan AI method to create records for book chapters from existing items in your collection, as you've done for the journal articles.
Asking additional staff resources is always difficult. So asking specific staff resource for one specific thing to do will be difficult, yeah. But asking staff resource to say, okay, we want to automate our way of working and we need some help with that, or we need someone who does that or that or that, yeah, maybe, why not? But yeah, the last thing, scanning book chapters from existing items, that would be very, very interesting. But we have 5 million books, and it's very even for the retro cataloging, we have scanned now altogether students, and the other was student 20,000 title page, and the other workers were 40,000. So in total, it's 60,000 books we have now cataloged using this application. But it's only 60,000 because in the beginning I said we have like 2 million books that are not in the stacks. So it's not that everything is done quickly like this. It's just as you create a way of a workflow that can quickly identify information. And now we have that. And sometimes we need people who scan, and we just want, I always ask students to do that, or when there's some budget. But yeah, I will not go into political details, but we don't have a government. There were elections in June, and they want to cut all our finance, half of our finances. So I think asking for more additional staff or more budget in current environment will be certainly difficult, but it can be an interesting project, certainly.
Okay, I think we've reached to the end of this forum. It's great that we use lots of time answer different interesting questions, and then I do see potential interesting panel discussion topic with regard to the difficult situation libraries having, and how to communicate with the library managers to let them know the value of cataloging data, and then how to help the future students, our future colleagues, to get ready for the AI era, and also what's going to happen to our current career future. So stay tuned. We will open to all those questions so we can have some interesting panel discussions in the future. Thank you so much for Dr. Cohen and Dr. Lowagie, and thank you so much. I know in your time zone, it's definitely not a civil hour for you to stay that late. Thanks a lot for sharing your expertise with us, and I think we can adjourn this great forum. Stay tuned, guys, in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.